Your position is no longer required, Mr. Stroud.
The sound hit first a sharp metallic snap that sliced through the testing bay, followed by silence thick enough to feel. For a moment, even the hum of the hydraulic rig seemed to hold its breath. I was standing behind the glass wall, watching the flagship prototype lock into its final brake test. When the door swung open and light flooded the room, Holland Reeve stepped in immaculate navy suit, camera crew trailing behind her like satellites. She didn't belong here. Her heels clicked too cleanly against the oil-stained floor. "Effective today," she said, voice smooth for the microphones. "Our division is restructuring. Your position, Mr. Stroud, is no longer required." My name echoed through the chamber, bouncing off steel and silence. No explanation, no warning, just that one polished sentence meant to end 18 years of work. Behind me, the monitors still scrolled lines of live data: brake pressure fail, rate 3.2%. If you've ever watched everything you built vanish behind one corporate smile, tell me, where are you watching from right now? And if you believe silence can be more powerful than revenge, subscribe. Because this story is only beginning. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not yet. I looked down at the watch on my wrist, the one my father gave me the day I graduated from the engineering academy. I'd promised myself I'd sell it after the bonus $217,000 came through next week. That money would cover my son's tuition. The one thing I was still doing right. "Security will escort you," Holland added, already turning for the cameras. I felt every eye in the lab shift toward me, some pitying, some afraid to look too long. Evan Lee, the youngest engineer on my team, froze by the control board. I'd trained him from his first internship. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded once, collecting my tablet, my pen, the small notebook where I logged every system anomaly by hand. No scene, no protest, just a quiet exit, the kind that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. As the guards guided me toward the door, the monitors behind flickered a soft pulse of green text. My session ID still glowed on the active panel, user G. Stroud connected. The automatic door sealed shut with a hollow click, the kind that sounds final. I stood in the corridor, the echo fading down the concrete hall. Then, for reasons I couldn't explain, the second hand on my father's watch hesitated just one beat before it moved again. The garage smelled of cold metal and old oil, the kind of scent that seeps into your skin after too many years around machines. A single neon tube hummed above me, flickering every few seconds like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive or give up. I sat beside the prototype brake module, the same one I'd designed years ago, back when people still asked for my opinion before making decisions. Its steel casing caught the light, scarred with the faint burns of 1,000 tests. 18 years. That's how long I'd given this company through recessions, recalls, and 2 reorganizations. I'd joined fresh out of grad school, full of ideas and caffeine, determined to make vehicles safer for real people, not shareholders. I remembered sleeping under my desk in the testing center, waking up at 3 a.m. to rerun simulations because the certification window for the Federal Safety Board was closing in 2 days. I'd done it without overtime pay, without complaint. Back then, the old CEO used to stop by with coffee and say, "You're the kind of man who keeps the wheels turning." Gavin. Now his daughter's public relations prodigy was running my department. Holland Reeve, perfect hair, perfect lighting, zero understanding of what brake dynamics even meant. She'd built her career in branding, not engineering. But her father needed someone fresh to make the merger look exciting. I still remembered the way she smiled during meetings. Like every conversation was an audition. She didn't even bother pretending to respect the people who built the machines her slogans sold. On the workbench lay a faded envelope I hadn't opened in years, the thank you letter from the previous CEO, signed in ink that had begun to fade. "You've saved this company more than once," it said. The words blurred slightly as I reread them under the stuttering light. Beside the letter, a child's drawing fluttered from the wall crayon lines, bright and uneven. My son had made it when he was 5, 2 stick figures beside a car with huge circular wheels, and the words, "Dad makes cars safe." That simple message weighed more than any corporate title I'd ever held. I turned to my laptop, half expecting another generic company update. instead. The folder labeled Final Break Test. Confidential caught my eye. I opened it. The data looked wrong, too clean. The small anomaly I'd logged the previous night, the 3.2% pressure deviation, was gone, replaced with a neat, flawless column of zeros. My pulse slowed, not sped up, an engineer's instinct kicking in. I checked the metadata. There it was. The signature I knew I'd find eventually, modified by H. Reeve. The text blinked in red across the screen, a warning pulse that painted the steel walls around me. The neon light above flickered one more time and steadied, humming softly as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for what I would do next. The night after they fired me. The house was too quiet. Even the crickets outside had gone still, as if the world itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. I sat at my workbench, the soft blue glow of my laptop cutting through the dark. The air smelled faintly of solder and cold metal, the scent of every night I'd ever spent fixing something that someone else had broken. I connected my personal backup drive, the one I'd set up years ago out of habit, not paranoia. The screen blinked to life. Files began to unfold like old memories, line after line of archived test runs, pressure graphs, and diagnostic logs. I scrolled until I found the folder marked Final Break Test, Raw Data. My stomach tightened. The original readings appeared exactly as I remembered, pressure deviation 3.2%. The flaw was still there, not a mistake, not a malfunction. A truth. I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath me. Holland must have thought deleting the anomaly would erase the problem, that hiding one set of numbers could convince the world the system was perfect. She didn't understand machines don't lie. People do. Out of curiosity. I opened my work email for what I assumed would be the last time. The server still remembered me. My credentials hadn't been revoked yet. Near the top of the inbox sat an internal thread forwarded from Holland's account. Urgent, sanitize all data before investor review. IPO schedule cannot shift. My hands hovered above the keyboard. She wasn't even subtle about it. I took a long breath, forcing my pulse to slow. Getting angry wouldn't help. I'd learned long ago that calm is the sharpest weapon. So instead, I began checking what she hadn't touched. I opened the system console for auto-sync backup, the automatic data transfer I'd installed to mirror our safety reports to the federal compliance server. A progress bar crawled across the screen, active. She hadn't known it existed. The sync scheduler appeared next, and there it was, countdown timer glowing in pale green at the bottom corner. Next transmission. 48 hours. I stared at it, listening. The only sounds in the room were the rhythmic tick, tick, tick of the wall clock and the low hum of the fan. Two steady beats perfectly aligned like a machine counting down to something inevitable. My reflection in the monitor looked foreign. Colder, steadier, for a moment. I thought about shutting it down, saving the company from embarrassment, saving her father's empire. Then I saw my son's drawing still taped to the wall beside me, the one with the crooked car and the words, "Dad makes cars safe." That decided it. I closed the laptop gently, the light fading across the steel table. My voice came out quiet, almost mechanical, as if spoken through the hum of the machines around me. Let the system speak for itself. The smell of burnt espresso clung to the air, mixing with the faint metallic tang that drifted from the direction of the factory down the street. I sat alone in the corner booth of a small cafe, one of those places where the lights hum quietly and no one looks up from their screens. My laptop was open, but I wasn't really reading the news. I was listening to the low chatter at the next table, to the workers in company jackets who didn't realize I was still close enough to hear. "But press event on Friday," one of them said, his voice bright with pride. "They're calling it the final test run before the merger announcement." My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. So that was Holland's next move, show the world a flawless machine built on falsified data. If the presentation went perfectly, the IPO would surge, the board would celebrate, and no one would ever know what they'd buried. A message flashed on my phone screen. It was from Evan. "They're still using your configuration code. No one changed the authorship." I read it twice, the words sinking in like slow ice. My system, the safety framework I'd built years ago, was still the foundation of every test file, even if they'd rewritten the numbers. The base signature embedded in the telemetry would still show who recorded the data, which meant I opened a hidden folder on my laptop, one I'd forgotten existed until that moment. Inside were archived test captures, video feeds from the brake rigs with timestamps and metadata burned into the frames. I clicked one open. Across the bottom corner of the footage, in small white text, it read, "Recorded by G. Stroud." That tag wasn't just a label, it was hard-coded into every recording system under my credentials. No matter how they altered the data, the video itself would always show my name. And when the autosync uploaded the raw footage to the compliance servers, it would prove everything. For a moment, I almost smiled, not with satisfaction, but with something quieter relief. Maybe I didn't need to break into their systems or rewrite anything. The truth was already set in motion. It would surface on its own, precise and undeniable, like a mechanism completing its final cycle. I closed the video and leaned back. The cafe was noisy again, espresso machines hissing, someone laughing too loud, but none of it touched me. I'd already made my decision. I wouldn't interfere. I wouldn't warn anyone. I would let the system speak in its own language, at its own time. The wall clock above the counter ticked over, the red digits flashing 8:30 a.m. Wednesday. I watched it shift, steady and certain. 44 hours left until the demonstration, 44 hours, until silence learned how to tell the truth. By the time I got back to my workshop, the air outside had turned heavy, soaked in the kind of quiet that follows a storm that never quite arrives. The truth sat in front of me on the screen, 3 simple numbers that could destroy an empire. I leaned forward, staring at the blinking cursor beside the words, "brake pressure deviation, 3.2%. If the raw data uploaded as scheduled, the merger would collapse within hours. Stockholders would panic. Thousands of workers, people I'd known for years, could lose their jobs. And all of it would trace back to me. For a moment, I imagined their faces, the welders who signed Christmas cards for my son, the maintenance crew who kept the plant running through blackouts, even the interns who still thought engineering was about invention, not damage control. Would they understand why I let it happen? Would anyone? My phone buzzed on the table. It was Evan. "Sir, we built this place on trust." Just 6 words, but enough to break through the noise. I stared at the message, the blue light reflecting off my hands. He wasn't pleading. He was reminding me who I used to be before politics replaced precision. I exhaled slowly, pushing the guilt aside, replacing it with clarity. I couldn't stop the system from speaking, but I could make sure it told the full truth, unfiltered and complete. I opened the configuration window for the auto-sync process, found the video field, and modified the script. My fingers moved on instinct, programming the command to attach the original brake test footage to the transmission package. No commentary, no edits, just evidence. Beside the keyboard sat the small framed photo of my son, the one he drew years ago, 2 stick figures beside a car with huge round wheels. I placed it next to the monitor, so his smiling crayon face looked at me as I typed. "This is what safety means," I murmured. The screen blinked once, then displayed the message I'd been waiting for: sync complete, no errors. For a brief second, I thought it was over. The air felt lighter, almost peaceful. Then another line of text appeared beneath it, flashing in amber. Next upload scheduled Friday. 11:00 a.m., the same hour as the press demonstration. I froze, the glow of the monitor washing over the room in a pale, surgical light. The fan whirred quietly, steady as a heartbeat. My pulse matched it. There would be no turning back, no manual override once the timer began. I looked up, the reflection of the LED strip cutting a cold streak across my eyes in the screen's surface. For the first time since the day they fired me. I wasn't afraid. I was certain. Friday at 11 o'clock, the system would speak. Friday morning arrived sharp and windless, the kind of day designed for cameras. The sky above the proving grounds was a perfect, corporate blue, and the press vans lined the fence in rows, their satellite dishes glinting under the sun, from where I stood, just beyond the barrier. I could smell the tang of ozone and fresh rubber, the familiar scent of machines pretending to be flawless. Holland's voice carried faintly across the lot, confident, rehearsed, wrapped in that same perfect tone she used when firing me. I held a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching her through the chain-link fence. She moved between executives and reporters with precision, her blazer pressed like armor. Cameras followed every turn of her head. A banner behind the stage read, "Future in Motion, Global Press Demonstration." The sound of engines flared from the test track as the flagship vehicle rolled into position. I knew every bolt of that prototype, every line of code behind the sensors, and I could almost feel the hydraulic systems breathe as they armed for the run. I took a slow sip, the bitter taste grounding me. It was 10:48 a.m., 12 minutes before everything started speaking for itself. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, a single message from Evan, "System online, main screen connected to federal server." I stared at those words longer than I needed to, letting the moment stretch thin like wire around me. The crowd murmured as the cameras pivoted toward the giant LED display that would broadcast the data live. Holland stepped up to the microphone, smiling for the investors in the front row. "Today," she said, "we prove that innovation is safety." The test car accelerated down the track, sunlight flashing across its frame. Inside the control tower, the data feed flickered, synchronized with the main screen. Then it happened so small, most people would have missed it. A single line appeared in the corner of the display, tiny against the flood of green numbers, "Incoming data authorized by G. Stroud." My name, still there, still speaking. Holland didn't see it yet, but one of the technicians did. He leaned toward the console, panic written across his face. I watched from the fence as he whispered to his supervisor, then dove for the control panel. A few seconds later, the screen blinked, and the line vanished. The audience never noticed. The executives relaxed, unaware of how fragile their illusion had just become. For a heartbeat, I almost pitied them. Almost. I finished my coffee, crushing the paper cup slowly in my hand. The wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of engines through the air. "They think it's gone," I murmured to myself, voice steady, calm. Then, as the first cheer rose from the crowd, I allowed a quiet smile to form. "You can mute a man," I said softly, "not a system." At first, everything looked perfect. The flagship car had completed its run flawlessly, or so it seemed. Applause rippled through the audience as Holland smiled into the cameras, her voice rising above the noise. "This," she declared, gesturing toward the massive screen behind her, "is the future of safety." Then the lights dimmed slightly. The feed on the screen hesitated, froze for half a second, and flickered. A faint click echoed through the speakers. The crowd quieted. Unsure if it was part of the presentation, I felt the hairs on my arms lift, the way they do before lightning strikes, without warning. The footage changed. The pristine image of the demonstration feed dissolved into another video grainier. Roar. The camera angle shifted to the test rig, time-stamped from 2 nights earlier. The same car, same setup, but this time the system wasn't flawless. The data bars spiked violently across the screen. A warning alert blinked in red, brake pressure failure detected. The sound that followed was unmistakable, the crunch of metal, the shriek of tires, the moment the axle tore free and the test car spun off the platform. A collective gasp cut through the air. Reporters lowered their cameras, then raised them again. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" But the question came louder from the front row. Is that real footage? The question echoed through the outdoor lot, feeding into every microphone, every live stream. Holland froze mid-sentence. Her smile faltered, eyes darting toward the screen, as if sheer denial could turn it off. She turned to the technicians in the control booth. They scrambled, hands flying across keyboards, but the video continued, unstoppable. On the bottom right corner of the footage, a new message appeared, simple, mechanical, undeniable automated compliance upload to NHTSA. Complete. That was the point of no return. Every journalist in the audience realized what they were watching wasn't a glitch, it was evidence. The truth had gone federal, and nothing could pull it back. Then chaos erupted. Reporters shouted questions over one another. Investors fumbled with their phones, streaming the collapse in real time. I could already imagine the trading algorithms reacting, the stock graphs plunging red across every financial feed. The soundscape turned surreal, the long, piercing wail of an alarm mixing with the relentless pop of camera flashes. From where I stood, outside the fence, the noise reached me like a wave panic, disbelief, outrage. I didn't move. My pulse was steady, my breath even. It wasn't triumph I felt, not exactly. It was something colder justice executed by a machine in less than 10 minutes. The company's stock price would start its free fall by the end of the hour. The merger would be dead. Through the chaos, I saw Holland on stage, turning in circles, searching the crowd as though the answer were human. Her lips trembled, voice breaking into the microphone. "Who did this?" she whispered. But the system had already answered. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the color of gunmetal. A light mist drifted over the parking lot, blurring the edges of the factory that now stood in lockdown. Flashing security lights pulsed across wet concrete like the heartbeat of a wounded machine. I was leaning against my car, watching the rain bead on the hood. When the sound of hurried heels broke through the drizzle, Holland appeared out of the haze, hair damp, eyes sharp, her designer heels slipping on the slick pavement. She looked smaller now, stripped of her cameras and audience, just a woman fighting the gravity of her own choices. "You destroyed everything," she shouted, voice cracking in the cold air. I didn't move. I let the words hit and fall away, like rain against metal. "I didn't destroy it," I said quietly. I unmuted it, her expression twisted, half disbelief, half fury. "You think that justifies this? The investors pulled out, the merger's dead. You ruined our future." I met her gaze evenly. "No," I replied. "I saved theirs. The people who'd have to drive what you lied about." She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the reflection of the security lights in her eyes. "I'll have you sued. Stroud. Every cent you've ever made gone." I almost smiled, not out of arrogance, but out of inevitability. "Go ahead," I said. "But your legal team already checked. The upload was automatic. I didn't press a key. The system did what it was built to do, report the truth." For a second, her anger faltered. The rain deepened, soft at first, then steadier, pooling at our feet, somewhere nearby. The low hum of emergency generators kicked on, filling the silence between us. Her phone buzzed. She didn't answer it immediately until the screen flashed bright enough for me to read the words over her shoulder. "Board has suspended you effective immediately." Her breath caught. She turned slightly, as if the world had tilted beneath her. "They can't do that," she whispered, more to herself than to me. I didn't reply. Some truths don't need witnesses. Footsteps approached from behind. Evan walked through the mist, a hard hat tucked under his arm. His jacket was soaked through, but his grin was quiet, respectful. He stopped beside me, holding out the helmet I'd worn every day for 18 years. "You earned this back," he said. I took it, the plastic cold and familiar in my hands. For the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. I placed the helmet on my head. Across the parking lot, the headlights of an idle car cut through the drizzle, reflecting in the puddles like 1,000 fractured suns. I stood there, silent, watching the ripples fold over one another. Not victory, not vengeance, just the clean symmetry of cause and consequence. 3 days later. The noise had finally quieted. The headlines spoke louder than anyone ever could. Every major network carried the same breaking story in bold letters. $2, $8 billion. Merger canceled, CEO steps down. Amid safety scandal. Beneath it, smaller text that made me pause. Holland Reeve under federal investigation. The world had given it a name of its own. The Break Truth incident. I watched it unfold from the garage where everything had begun. The air smelled of dust and solder again, familiar and forgiving. Morning sunlight spilled through the half-open blinds, painting long stripes across the workbench. On it lay the old brake module, the prototype that had started this entire mess, polished, silent, honest. The reporters argued on screen. speculating how an internal integrity breach had undone one of the largest mergers in the industry's history. I didn't need to hear the details. I'd lived every second of it. What mattered was that the truth had reached the surface, unaided, unforced. In the language of systems and data, a notification chimed softly on my laptop. I opened my inbox. The message header read, Federal Motor Safety Administration Advisory Appointment, Mr. Stroud. Your technical oversight and ethical diligence have drawn national attention. We would be honored to have you serve as a senior safety consultant for the upcoming reform initiative. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. It wasn't pride I felt, not exactly, more like the quiet return of gravity after drifting too long without it. My work, my principles, the long nights that no one saw, they hadn't vanished after all. They had simply taken the long way home. My phone buzzed. A message from Evan appeared. The new batch passed with 0 fail rate. Your design stayed. I could almost hear his voice saying it. Steady, proud. I smiled, small and private, the kind of smile you make when you realize the world kept spinning in the right direction. The clock on the wall ticked once. Then again. Sunlight reached the far side of the room, landing on the old prototype like a spotlight. The metal caught the light, glowing faintly gold. In that glow, I saw everything that had survived, not the company, not the money, but the purpose behind the work. I reached for the watch that had been sitting untouched on the shelf since the day they fired me. The leather strap was worn, the glass scratched from years on factory floors. I wound it gently, feeling the faint resistance give way, when I set it down on the table beside the brake module. The second hand hesitated just as it had that morning in the corridor, and then began to move again. Steady, certain, alive. The morning came quiet and weightless. Sunlight spilled through the half-open garage door, warming the concrete floor. Beyond it, I could hear the faint rhythm of birds mixed with the distant hum of the city waking. For once, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I sat at the workbench, a cup of coffee cooling beside my notebook. Years of notes filled its pages, smudged formulas, sketches, and half-finished ideas on a clean line. I wrote silence can be its own voice. The pen felt steady in my hand. The offer from the federal board still sat unanswered in my inbox, senior safety advisor. I reread it once more before typing my reply. Truth works fine without titles. Then I hit send and closed the laptop. Footsteps crunched outside. When I looked up, Evan was standing in the doorway, holding a wrapped frame. He looked tired, but the kind of tired that comes from relief, not defeat. I thought you'd want this back, he said. Inside was the old team photo, 20 of us in safety vests, smiling despite the grime and exhaustion. I ran my thumb over the glass. We did good work, I said quietly. Evan nodded. Still are. Your brake design stayed. 0 fail rate after he left. The garage fell silent again. I leaned back, listening to the slow tick of the wall clock, each second softer than the one before. The air felt clean, like something had finally reset. As evening came, I switched on the small radio above the bench. The anchor's voice came through steady and clear. Federal Advisor Gavin Stroud's recommendations to revise national safety protocols have been approved for implementation next quarter. I smiled faintly, not out of pride, but peace. The truth had traveled its full circuit, quiet, unstoppable, complete. I glanced at the notebook, still open to that single line. Maybe silence wasn't weakness after all. Maybe it was how truth breathes slowly, patiently, until it fills every space it was once shut out from. The sunlight stretched across the garage one last time, landing on the old brake module, the metal glowing like it finally forgave the hands that built it. I picked up my father's watch, wound it once, and set it beside the module. The second hand hesitated and began to move. If you believe truth doesn't need to shout to be heard, tell me where you're watching from right now. And if this story meant something to you, share it, like it, and subscribe, because sometimes courage spreads quietly, one story at a time.